Joe Bennett called me the other day just to make sure we were still on the willing before he published the list, and I give him the go ahead for that. So, how you feeling? Good morning. I don't know if I heard a bell ring or not, but according to it did. Okay, because according to my clock, we're 9:01. So, before we begin our class, we just need to go around the room and remember all of those on the sick and injured list. Remember the Moody's. Brother Terry is, they're still messing with his medication, trying to get him feeling better. He says today he's so. So let's keep him in our thoughts. Tina is supposed to come home today from the hospital. She went in Friday. Uh, just a little history there. When I got her to the ER, her pulse rate was down to 41. So even a resting pulse rate for an athlete, that's kind of on the low side. So, and then she had passed out for about an hour and didn't know anything that was going on. But they've got her back ready to come home today, hopefully. April gets out of her brace Tuesday and still in therapy after her surgery. Lisa is going back in January for a follow-up, probably do some surgery on her at that time. Sister Dot's back with us after a couple of trips to Birmingham. How are you doing? Won't talk about it, right? Okay, so apparently not really all that great. Both the Stablers are doing somewhat better. I was kidding Brother Stabler today that he was without his helping stick, and he said, well, he just forgot it, but he was feeling some better. So, and then Randy, Brother Tim Ashley's brother up in Birmingham Hospital, let's remember him. He got to go home Friday. Okay. Uh, do you know if they put him on a pump like they was talking about, or? Okay. Anyone we missed in that go around? Okay. Brother Stabler, would you lead us in a prayer, please? We are in 1 Samuel chapter 25, 1 Samuel chapter 25. As we continue our journey through the Bible, just as a refresher right now, the previous chapters that we've looked at Saul being king and how he didn't do exactly what he was supposed to, and how God had appointed David, but David is not yet on the throne. Saul is still around and not liking him. It seems like every day that goes by, Saul dislikes him a little bit more and more, and he's been chasing him down and after him and things of that nature. So when we pick up in chapter 25, Samuel died. Now, who is Samuel? Just a brief history of Samuel. Who is he, and what was his role in all of this? Samuel was the last judge and a high priest. He was in the, if you want to call it, a transition from the judges to the kings. He was the one that had talked to and appointed Saul. He was also the one that had talked to and appointed David. He had been promised to God from his birth. So that is Samuel. If we try to figure out how old he was, estimates on it range anywhere from 60 to 90 plus years of age, just depending on which commentary. I don't really think that that is all that important, as long as we know that he was born, dedicated to God, served as a priest, was a judge, and then had direct influence and contact with Saul and David. But he died, and all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented and buried him in his house in Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran. Now, remember, I use the King James Version. English is 400 years old. Some of your translations will be a little bit different here. But this does not mean that they literally buried him in his house. It was probably on his grounds or in that area, but on his home place anyway. And then David went down to Paran. There was a man in Maon whose possessions were in Carmel, and the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and of a beautiful countenance, but the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. What does the word churlish mean here? Rude. Okay. As we go on, we'll find out that he was not a very good person. But his wife was. Verse 4, David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, and David sent out 10 young men, and David said unto the young men, Get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name, and thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity, Peace be both in thee, and peace to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. Now, this was a common greeting back in those days. If you wanted peace on the people and the house and all, that just meant that you were their friend and you wanted everything to be good. And now I've heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while that they were in Carmel. So David has told these young men to just relay the story, that you can draw the inference that some of this man's property was with David for at least a little while, and that he didn't take any of their property and he didn't hurt any of the people. He protected everything. And now he's going to ask something of them. And when David's young men came, they spake to Nabal according to all the words in the name of David, and ceased. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Now, if you read between the lines here, it appears as though Nabal, and I'm going to put in, this is my opinion, you don't necessarily draw this inference from the Bible, but it's my opinion that Nabal is trying to already start backpedaling that he doesn't owe David anything, because he's saying, well, a lot of servants take things and leave. But if you look at it from David's side, they had probably, and again, this is just trying to read between the lines, why would these men be in David's camp if they had not been out searching for lost sheep or out pasturing or something of that nature? and want to return. So you can look at it from both angles here, but based on Nabal's character, I think he was just being already starting to build his wall there that he didn't know David anything. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers and give it unto men whom I know not whence they be? After what I've said, I'm going to ask you a question. Based on who David was and what had been taking place, and Saul had basically put out a bounty on his life, telling everybody to either kill him or bring him to be killed. Is Nabal, has he lived in isolation? Does he not know who David is? Time for your opinion. I believe he did. That would be my take on it. So David's young men turned their way and went again and came and told him all these things, meaning they went back to David. And David said unto his men, Gird ye on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword. And David also girded on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. Now, if you recall, 400 had been there, had gone to David, and now if 200 is going to stay behind and 400 going to put on weapons of war and go out, that means that his band of men had grown somewhat. But why would David be ready at this point to go take military action against Nabal? What justification did he have? That's sort of a trick question. He really didn't have any justification, did he? Just because he had been, I suppose if you want to phrase it the way people do it today on the streets, he was dissed or disrespected. That was no reason for David then to weapon up and get ready to go. Brother Golden. There you go. So he was getting ready to do something wrong at this point. Verse 14, but one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, Behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on them. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt. Neither missed we anything as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They were a wall unto us both by night and day, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. So this sort of builds on what I'd been saying, that they were out there taking care of Nabal's sheep, and now David had been their protector. When they say there was a wall between them and anything going on, that just meant that David was taking care of them and protecting them. In verse 17, now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. Again, who was Belial? One of the pagan gods, and so anybody that sided with him. But here, this person seems to be saying that Nabal is of such character that you can't reason with him. You can't even ask him a question. He's got his mind made up. He knows what he wants. He's not going to let anybody influence him in anything. So, verse 18, then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep ready dressed and 5 measures of parched corn and 100 clusters of raisins and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on the asses. So again, she is the good person in this story, and she is about to try to make peace and take things to David. Now, how many men did David have with him total? 400 warriors, but if she went to his camp, there was another 200 staying with the rest of it. So you can use either number you want to, 400 or 600, but how many of you have been around sheep? Once you cut off their wool, how much sheep is left? Not much, right? How far are 5 sheep going to go to feed 400 to 600 men? Not very far, right? So this is more or less a token offering to say, I'm trying, or at least that's the way I look at it. And she said unto her servants, verse 19, go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. So she's doing all of this in secret because, well, with him being husband, she knows his character. And with his character being what it was, what would he have done? He would have stopped her. And more people than he would have paid the price, but we'll get there in just a few minutes. Verse 21, David had said, surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that. Back up one, I missed a verse. And it was so as she rode on the ass that she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. What is covert in this sentence? Some of you have a different translation. What would that be? Cover. Basically, they just went by way where they had some cover. But David's men met her. Now verse 21, and David said, surely in vain, and he's just repeating the story to her, that he had kept and protected all that Nabal had. And he hath requited me evil for good. So this is where I said he really didn't have a reason to go out and fight with him, but because Nabal had not treated him well after he had treated Nabal that way, he thought something needed to be done. So and more also do God unto the enemies of David, if I leave of all that pertain to him by the morning light any male of his group. King James is a little rude in this section, so I'm not going to read it. It's just what it indicates is that David is about to do in all the males, men and animals, that Nabal had. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground. Is this something unusual that people do in those days, those customs? Nope. It was customary for them to prostrate or put themselves before somebody of a higher position. This even goes into the New Testament, where seems like one had fallen down before someone, and he said, "Rise, I am a man also." So, but here it is customary to do things that way. She fell at his feet and said unto me, upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience and hear the words of thy handmaid. What was she really asking David to do here? She fell at his feet and said, upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be. What was she attempting to do? Pardon? She was willing to take Nabal's place, even though Nabal was the bad character. Let the iniquity be on me. And then she wanted to speak to David. Next section shows that she's a pretty wise person too. let not, my lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my lord, whom thou didst send. So here she brought all this stuff. She's making an attempt, and she's saying, yeah, that guy is who he is, but I'm here willing to take his place. But I didn't know any of this was going on. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. So somebody put that in today's English, verse 26. I'll read it again. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies and they that seek evil to my Lord be as Nabal. Translations? Can we look at it this way? She's already said that she didn't have a clue what was going on. Now she's brought stuff to make peace. She's also indicating that Nabal was the main character in this, and that all the people around Nabal, his servants, didn't have anything to do with it. So she is appealing to David that if any of the other men be like Nabal, let whatever is going to happen to Nabal happen to them, but don't you just go out and slaughter everybody here. Does that not sound like what she's saying? Verse 28, verse 27, verse 28. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thy handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. So here she's even chastising David a little bit. She's saying, up to this point, David, no evil's been found in you. You've been good. To this point, God has held back your hand from shedding blood by your own hand. Evil hath not been found in thee. She reminded him that he was to fight the Lord's battles. Was the Lord's battles to take revenge? As Brother Golden said, who's the revenge belong to? Retribution. So it's clear here that David did not have any reason to do what he was about to do. And now she's interceded. Verse 29, yet a man is risen to pursue thee and to seek thy soul, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thy enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dwelt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. I kind of find this particular section interesting, because if you just sort of start drawing everything down to a conclusion here, what is she saying in this last verse I just read? I said she appeared to be a woman of wisdom, and this section showed that. But has she not basically just said that Nabal is Nabal? No, God's going to take care of him and anybody that was like him. The rest are going to be spared. And now when Nabal is taken care of and you're appointed and you are the king, remember me. So what is she saying to him when she says, remember me? Yes, ma'am. And that's where I was going to go. I know where I had been, where the way I had been saying it, it was sort of leading up to where you could conclude that. But this was a customary way of doing things, uh, where if all, in my opinion, at this point, all she was saying was, when you become king, remember I treated you well, even though he treated you badly. Uh, I'm one of the good guys, so to speak. And yes, it happened all the time that it was just a way of saying, remember which side I'm on. Well, there's no indication that he really didn't treat her badly, because you look today at some of the worst situations that women are living under with men, and they don't want to leave the man. They still will take care of him. I'm not saying that she was abused here, but it the thing that we do have is that when she was doing all of this, she kept it secret from him, and didn't let him know that she was going to David to try to intercede there. So I am of the opinion, and again, this is just an opinion, but it is my opinion that people who are this way in public are this way in private. I don't think the two can be separated. It might not be as severe, but uh, we'll move on from there. Verse 32, and David said to Abigail, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me, and blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which has kept me this day from coming to shed blood and from avenging myself with mine own hand. So she got David's attention. She woke him up. Now he's letting her know how much he appreciates that fact, and it did apparently get his attention. For verse 34, for in very deed, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hast hasted and come to meet me, surely there had not been left unto Nabal by this morning light in any male that Nabal had. So this verse just reinforces the previous verse, that if you had not come to me and said what you said, by morning's light, everything that Nabal had, all the males would be dead. Yes, ma'am. I totally agree. I don't think she wanted Nabal killed, but at the same time, what we had uh, back a few verses when she was trying to make intercession there and saying, "Let any of those that have been like Nabal receive the same thing that Nabal gets." But I do think that she was trying her best to protect as many people as she could, especially the innocent. Whereas if David had gone in with the sword, he was going to kill everybody, all the males of that group. So I think her venture was out there. Uh, one, she didn't want Nabal killed, but she was trying to do as much damage control as she possibly could and save as many as she could. Absolutely. Anything else? So David received of her hand that which she had brought him, and said unto her, Go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice and have accepted thy person. So, closing verse right there is just saying that he had agreed with everything that she had said and that everything was going to be peaceful. Now, Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king, and Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. So, why did she not tell him at this point if she wasn't somewhat leery of him? One is that normally what happens to a person who has drunk too much uh, is they are either going to get very, very sedate or they're going to get very aggressive. There seems to be no middle ground. Uh, Same way drugs have an effect, alcohol has an effect. And here it could be that she just knows that, uh, well, let's see, an old phrase is a bad drunk. Uh, Somebody that gets mean when they're drunk, they're a mean drunk. Or so here she's not going to say anything till the morning until he at least sobers up. But it came to pass in the morning when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. What would it mean that his heart died within him and he became as a stone? Possibly. What would have caused it? Okay. So when she told him this, that was one of the movies that one of the series we watch all the time. That was the stressor. That was the thing that put him over. But apparently, whatever happened to him at that point, his emotional heart, or well, let's see, we've got the thinking heart and the emotional heart, but the emotion is what drives people's attitudes. So whatever happened at this point was that he was done with life. He was just basically waiting to die. And took about 10 days, but then he died. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord that hath pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil, for the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. David had a wife already, didn't he? Yes, no? Right. It gets kind of confusing if you want to get into the legalities of it. Apparently, he was married, but she was sent to another man, or another man was acting as. So she was not with David. And again, in those days, it was customary to take more than one wife. So here, why do you think David then wanted to marry her? She was awesome. Well, that's about the best way you can put it. Well, it says that she had a beautiful countenance, so that meant that she was a lovely lady. And then with her coming before David, when David was on the warpath, it showed courage. In addition to courage, it showed wisdom when she got David's attention and kept him from doing something bad. So I'm like you. I think she was an awesome, well-rounded person in the fact that she was courageous, knowledgeable, good-looking. Uh, Customarily, that would have been what had happened. The male, if he had married her, well, she would have, with no kids involved, she would have gotten Nabal's property by David marrying her. He would have been in charge of the property. So, but do you think that was his ultimate goal? I think the goal was that she would. David figured that she would make a good wife for all the reasons that we just stated. Mhm. Everything working out providentially. And when the servant of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth and said, Behold, let thy handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. Here we can just add one more attribute. She's humble. She's willing to serve in any capacity. Verse 42, Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her. And she went after the messenger of David and became his wife. David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. So, why would he take a second wife? No reason other than it was customary for them to do things like that. Verse 44, but Saul had given, and this is what we was mentioning earlier, and here's where it tells us. Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Phalti, the son of Laish, which was of Gallim. So, even though David had Michal for wife, Saul the king had given her to somebody else. So David, in all his running around out there, and it seems reasonable that if you want to go back and just sort of track things down, if David was married to Michal, why did he not take her with him when he was fleeing from the king? Pardon? Saul didn't let her go. I think more likely was that David didn't want to put her in danger. So he left her back because if you recall, when they come looking for David and she's told Saul that basically David had lied to her, that she didn't know what was going on. So she was trying to protect herself from Saul. So it appears as though Saul wasn't there and couldn't have held her if she had wanted to go with David. But David being on the run that way, he just knew that was no place for his wife. So he left her back, and then now she is under Saul's control, and Saul gave her to somebody else to wife. And then, so David then is without, and now he comes into this fortune, and now he has wives. Luke just got up to ring the bell. Chapter 26, I don't really want to get into that. Brother Terry will cover that Wednesday night. But is there any questions, comments, additions, subtractions to what we just looked at? Yeah. Well, like you say, it's vague in this area because it doesn't say what led up to this. But if you recall, David loved Michal. Michal loved David. Saul acquiesced to giving her to David for wife. And then when David had to flee, from that point on, there's no, I mean, we can just look at and have to draw suppositions around the edges. But the only, now again, this is just my opinion. But what would be the only way that David could fight and get Michal back? Kill Saul, which he was not going to do. And was that honorable? Might have been best for her. You see, I think, and I think that David's attitude was with everything that Saul had done to him, I've got to feel like that David had a little animosity towards Saul. He wasn't his best friend anymore, but he was still, that is the king. So he was respectful of the position. Even when he had opportunity in the cave to kill him, what did he do? Previous chapter. He just cut off a piece of his garment, showed him that he could have, but was not going to harm him. If he had killed him, would that not have ended the whole situation? But he was so respectful of that position that he wasn't going to go there. Brother Clunch. Yes, sir. So yeah, even though David was favored by God, David was not perfect, was he? David made mistakes. No courting back in those days. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Yes, ma'am. Right, but at this point, she's not there. But as Alyssa said, later on, we find out that when David is in that position, he does some negotiating. Thank y'all for your attention and comments.